Hello, YouTubers and fellow DeLorean enthusiasts. What you see behind me is one of the most recognizable cars ever made. It's my 1981 DeLorean, VIN 2955, made in August of 1981. There were about 9,000 DeLoreans made, 6,000 or so are left in the world. They started with VIN 500, so this makes it 2,456 built or so, something like that. Forgive my notes. There's a lot of things I want to say about what I did to this car, so had to jot a few things down. Start with the basics. All DeLoreans came with the same engine. It's a European engine called a PRV. It's called that because it was developed jointly by Peugeot, Renault, and Volvo. All manual transmission DeLoreans, like this one, came with a Renault UN1 transmission transaxle. So that's just scratching the surface on DeLorean stock drivetrain. This video isn't about that. This video is about what I did to swap the drivetrain. Why did I swap the engine and transmission? Well, a few reasons. The early versions of the PRV that all came in the DeLorean had a Bosch K Jetronic fuel distribution system. So it was kind of one of those designs where it was electronically fed but mechanically metered. So you had a fuel distributor. It kind of looked like an ignition distributor, but instead of ignition wires, of course, it was fuel lines coming off that distributor. So you had an electronic fuel pump that gave it 60 or so PSI, and the way that it was metered was as air would go through the intake, it would push a flap down and push a plunger into the distributor, kind of like a teeter-totter. So the more air that went in, the more fuel it would give the engine. Well, that system just hasn't aged very well. It's just not very precise. And even after replacing all those components, lots of money involved in that, I just decided it was time to get something a little bit more reliable. I was constantly messing with that PRV fuel system to keep it right in that good air-to-fuel mixture range. So I swapped this with a Chevy LS V8 engine. Why an LS? Well, I did the LS for several reasons, but the biggest reason was several folks have swapped LS in just about any car you can imagine. And there's been other folks that have done LS engines in DeLorean. So there's a wealth of information out there that I could rely on and have some help with swapping this engine out. And then a side benefit is, I mean, this engine's 325, 350 horsepower range. The original PRV was 130 horsepower. So yeah, this is about 2.5, 3 times the horsepower. So anyway, and now about the transmission. Why I was at it, I had the car so far torn apart, I was like, you know what? What's some transmission options? And a Porsche 911 is a true rear engine car. So I picked the Porsche 911 transmission out of a 996 911, so it's a 2001 Porsche 911 transmission mated to this LS engine. It's a 6-speed manual transmission. And the reason I picked that is here. Let me show you. Let me show you a few pictures here. So what you're looking at is basically a Porsche 911 and the DeLorean. And as you can see, the engine layout all the way in the back, it puts that power into the transmission. You can do your gear changes, and it sends that power back towards the rear of the car and then out the axle that's built into the transmission. That's why they call it transaxle. So anyway, that type of setup was perfect for the swap that I wanted to do. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pop this engine cover and bring the camera in closer and show you everything that's going on under here. Alright, here's a close-up of the engine. This is a LS4 out of a 2006 Pontiac Grand Prix GXP. LS4, you're thinking, if you're an LS person, what is that out of? Well, it's out of all those front-wheel drive cars from the mid 2000s to late 2000s. So your Monte Carlo SS, your Impala SS, the Pontiac Grand Prix that I just mentioned, and there's one other that I'm forgetting. Anyway, the reason that this engine was chosen was the accessory bracket up here is really tight against the engine. You can see the top of the accessory bracket where the radiator cap is. So that way you can see that there's hardly any space in here left to go. This right here is the start of the back bumper. So I mean, it is right up there against the back bumper. So it allowed it to be pretty compact against the engine bay there in the back bumper. That's why the LS4 was chosen. Again, it's mated to a Porsche 911 transmission. I believe I'm the first person to do this exact combination to a DeLorean. That is the LS4 to a G96 transmission. That's the 911 996 transaxle. There's another in progress by a guy that's helped with several swaps and has done several swaps himself. LS swaps being common, like I mentioned earlier, but they're really not that common for DeLoreans. I believe there's around like a dozen of us or so that exist that have put an LS into a DeLorean. Some specifics here. That is not the LS4 intake. That is an LS2 intake out of a C6 Corvette. And that's the LS4 throttle body. So LS2 intake, LS4 throttle body, and you can see it's remotely mounted there. I had to have this fabricated up because if you put the throttle body right on the end here, it went right into the firewall. So anyway, the mass airflow sensor, of course, is out of 2006 Impala SS. It's the E40 ECM, which is out of the Pontiac Grand Prix 2006, and it's just flashed to remove the vehicle anti-theft system and tuned a little bit. Various things were done to it, you know, cooling fan time, turn on, and stuff like that. The cylinder heads, when I first got this engine, I tore it completely down. I took the cylinder heads off, had them resurfaced, clean, valve job, including seals. You know, I put all new bearings, main bearings, connecting rod bearings, front main seal, rear main seal. I mean, you name it. Just refreshed all the gaskets, of course, why it's torn apart. It also does have the active fuel management or displacement on demand deleted with LS7 lifters and LS7 valley cover. So I had to do an oil pressure sensor modification. I'm not going to really zoom in on that, but this is the DeLorean oil pressure sensor back here, and you can, I don't know if you can see, but it's at an angle. So the stock valley cover pan has that coming straight up and would have hit the intake here. So that was chopped and welded at a 45-degree angle. Let's see what else. It also has the LM7 camshaft out of a Chevy 1500 truck. That was part of the AFM DOD delete. I got stainless steel universal headers with high flow bullet catalytic converters on it, and it's got Moroso spiral flow mufflers right on the back side of those catalytic converters. The oil pan is 2006 Pontiac GTO oil pan. It has to be the GTO because the way the frame of the DeLorean is, the sump needs to be towards the back of the car. The sump on the LS4 would have gone right in the way of the frame cross member, so had to use that oil pan. It's got the LS4 AC compressor. This is a super long story, but it was modified from variable displacement to fixed displacement to mate well with the DeLorean air conditioning system. And it also has a DeLorean alternator. Actually, it's an early 1990s Saturn alternator. Here's I'm going to move on in this video. This is going to be a picture and video montage of the project start to finish. I'm going to start with a video of the last time the original engine was running in the car. Enjoy. Here's just one last look at the PRV running.
start taking her apart.